Hi there and welcome to the Pod, the Northwest's newest all-purpose recording studio for content creators. If you've got something to say and need a place to say it, search for podpod.uk. In all the usual social channels, give us a like and a follow and get in touch to reserve your time to create.
Right, welcome everybody to our latest Wigan Borough Social Enterprise Network podcast, funded by Proper Good. So here today we've got, I'll introduce yourself.
Caeryn Collins from Really Good Enterprises.
Laura Ingham, Managing Director at Armed Forces Community Headquarters.
Wendy Walters, Project Manager of the Armed Forces Community Headquarters.
Brilliant. Thanks everybody for coming. So the first thing we'll talk about today is the upcoming Social Enterprise Day, which is the National Social Enterprise Day is the 21st of November. But in Wigan we've got some events lined up, which obviously you're creating for us, Caeryn. So I'll leave it to you to
coordinate.
Great.
Okay.
Coordinate.
Tell us about
it is
the
your
pie.
job.
Tell us about the
It's your
pie.
brainchild.
It's all about the pies. It's
all about the
always all
pies.
about the pies with me. It's a bit of a running theme. I don't really eat that many pies either, but anyway, everybody else does. We're from Wigan after all. So basically what we wanted to look at, I think, or if you like, there's a bit of background to this. And the background is that we've got a very strong business community in Wigan. We've got a very strong social enterprise and VCSE sector in Wigan. But often we don't have the two communicating. And actually there's so much synergy between the two, there's so much help and support that they can give each other. And so really we wanted to make sure that Social Enterprise Day did something to celebrate that connection and those synchronicities between the two sectors, if you like. So what we've done is we've taken the model of the Soup event, which came from Detroit, and a Soup event basically was a community event where people would come to a community event for which you paid, I think, $5 a ticket. You got a bowl of soup, you heard people say what they wanted to do in their community, and the people they thought had the best idea got the ticket money.
Like an early Dragon's Den.
Yeah, very much so. So we've taken on that, we've taken that concept and we've built on it. And obviously because it's Wigan and because we love pies, we've called it Pitch and Pie. So
it's brilliant. I love it.
So the basic premise is some of our social enterprises will come in and they'll make a pitch for their project. Now their project can be anything that fits the kind of social enterprise banner. Now what we've said is they don't have to be a registered CIC or charity, but they have to be working like a social enterprise would. And then obviously for financial monitoring and stuff, they do have to have a community-based bank account, so more than one signatory, so that we can protect those funds. So what will happen is they'll come and pitch their project. They'll pitch it to, a bit like the whole Dragon's Den thing, they'll pitch it to a panel of business experts who will ask some questions about their project, and then the audience and the panel will then vote.
I can see you as a bit of kind of Deborah Mead on the panel,
okay.
actually. Have you
I'm
got your
not
little
gonna be on the
hand?
panel.
You got your little stack of money?
I'm not going to see, I could happily sit there and stroke it, but I don't think I'm going to give it away.
Be a little notepad scribbling stuff there.
No, I'm not going to be on the panel. There will be some business entrepreneurs from the community who very kindly offered their services to be on the panel. But it goes a little bit further than just being on the panel. So not only will they win the ticket money, they will win sponsorship. So we've got the event sponsored by some very kind businesses, and they've sponsored to the tune of £500. So there's a minimum pot for them to pitch for of £500, and then whatever ticket sales we get on the night, all of the money from the ticket sales will go to the winning pitch. Now, what they'll also get is 12 hours business support from those businesses. But they can do it in a way that suits their business. So it's not a case of saying they'll get 12 hours from, Joe Blogs, managing director of whatever.
Doesn't matter what it is.
They will get 12 hours support that they can decide how they do it. So they might want a couple of hours of HR support, and they might want a couple of hours of kind of digital marketing strategy support. They might want a bit of finance support, and then they might just want somebody who's run and expanded a business and knows what they're doing. So they can split that support however way they like.
It's really good, that, isn't it?
So we've got a list of, so far we've got 18 business mentors have offered to give their time, and so they'll be able to pick from those those bios from those mentors, or have a chat with them and say, yeah, I'd like some time with those. So it's that ongoing support, and that to me is where the real magic happens. It's not just about having the money for a project, it's having that extra set of eyes, or somebody you can go and chat to about, well, is this a good idea? How
Lived
can I make this
experience.
sustainable?
Yeah, absolutely.
How can I get money in from this? How can I market it? How can I work with other people, etc. Now, we don't want to be too prescriptive on the night as well. So we've actually said to businesses, if you want to come and be in the audience, just that, not even just as a mentor, but you just want to come and be in the audience and just have a look at some of the amazing community projects you've got going on in your community, by all means, come and buy a ticket and come and watch. And if you want to go and approach any of those pictures at any point afterwards and say, I really love what you're doing, can I come and offer you some support? Go ahead.
Yeah, feel free.
Absolutely.
It's really good, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what we want them to do. So we want them to get involved. Now, some people have said, well, why would businesses want to get involved? Well, why would you not want to get involved, for starters?
Absolutely.
I mean, firstly, I think I may have mentioned this already, but there'll be a free pie. Well, it's not free. It comes in the price of your ticket money, but £7.50. I mean, it's not exactly expensive, is it?
No.
So
to give back as well. It's not, you're not just
Exactly.
buying a pie, you're investing into an idea. aren't you?
Absolutely. But businesses now are really seeing the benefits of having that CSR, so corporate social responsibility strategy. They're seeing it in terms of the impact on their brand, that they're being seen as a business people want to do business with because they care about their community. They can tie it into their wellbeing strategies for their team. It helps with recruitment. People want to work for businesses that are good. So it's a win-win for those businesses. But a lot of businesses don't know where to start with that. So we see a lot of the bigger organisations getting support in the borough. Nothing wrong with that. They're all fantastic organisations who deserve that support from businesses. But how does that maybe smaller SME start with finding a project that they want to help and support in their community? So this is a great way of showcasing those projects that are going on in the community for those businesses to just come and sit and watch in the audience and go, do you know what? That fits with my values. I want to be a part of that. And just offering that support. And that doesn't have to cost much either. Because we've got loads of businesses that we've worked with in the past who really want to do this, but haven't got a grant to sponsor an event. They haven't got loads of money they can throw at taking somebody to corporate hospitality at the football
Or time,
whatever else.
to kind of go and do that research and see what's happening in your community.
Sometimes they just want to be able to say, look, I quite happily come and help and support you, or be there at the end of a phone for you. And quite often some of those enterprises, that's what they need more of. Or they might have a wellbeing strategy and they say, right, well, we're going to let our staff go out and volunteer in community projects. Where do you start finding the projects to volunteer at? So the idea of Pitch and Pie really is to well, there's lots of ideas behind it. One is to showcase some of the work that's going on with our amazing social enterprises in the borough. We're lucky. We know there's loads of them. But it's to then allow businesses to support those amazing enterprises and projects within their local community. It's to foster some really meaningful connections in a way that's supportive, and then it's to offer that chance of funding and business mentorship to those social enterprises who might need it. So that's kind of the ideas behind it. We're going multi-location, so locations across the borough. We're not just sticking in Wigan, we're out in Lee as well at Spinners Mill. So yeah, hopefully there's a bit of something for everybody at the events.
And the dates of those are?
The dates of those are the 11th of November and the 13th of November.
Yeah. The 11th one is?
So the 11th is Lee Spinners Mill and the 13th is the Old Court.
And they're at 7 o'clock?
They are indeed.
Starting at 7,
They are indeed. So buy your tickets, come along and see what these amazing enterprises are doing. And we'd love to see loads of people there.
That's amazing. And then the winners of the Pitch and Pies will then be invited to the Social Enterprise Day event on the 21st, which is at the Atrium in Wigan Town Hall. So that's going to be an opportunity for the mentors going to be coming, the businesses as well. Are they coming to the day? They'll be invited to the day. So there's an opportunity there to showcase the winners and get to be part of the Social Enterprise Network. It's amazing. It's going to be a really amazing event and really great idea that. So yeah, thanks, Caeryn. That's amazing. idea and looking forward to it. Should be really good.
Absolutely. It's a real kind of step up, isn't it, I think, this year, in respect of the idea and the process and the actual support that's available. And we're huge supporters of social enterprises in the borough and across the Northwest, but I think it does mean something to businesses to be able to champion a local enterprise that kind of fits for your values. And from the perspective of somebody who's set up a social enterprise, sometimes you don't need business support or HR support. You need someone you can pick up the phone to and talk about things that are really hard. Somebody that's perhaps gone through that journey and understands your perspective. Somebody who can be a friend and help you learn lessons that you don't need to learn because they've kind of learnt them themselves, and and they're happy to share that knowledge. I think it's amazing. Well done.
Brilliant. And I'd love to see it happen on a regular basis. I'd love to see this sort of thing, because obviously social enterprises are being set up all the time.
Well, it's a social enterprise in itself, isn't
Absolutely.
it? To have a function that kind of runs itself through that kind of corporate funding, through some of the businesses and the ability to buy tickets, you've created a social enterprise in a social enterprise sector. So long may it continue, and hopefully some of those smaller businesses who've got those ideas, or not even businesses yet, we're projects or we're constituted groups or we're a group of the community, you've got a passion, it gives people that first stepping stone to creating something that's actually going to have an impact in the community. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah. Well, that's a really interesting point, actually, because what we'd love to see is also people who might want to be setting up these community enterprises come along as well themselves and see how other people are doing it, see what sort of projects are currently being supported, because that might give them some ideas and some inspiration. Hopefully having the panel there asking questions will get them thinking about the sorts of things that they might need to think about for their own projects as well. So if this led to the creation of more social enterprises moving forward, then that's another win as well.
I suppose it's giving people that light bulb moment as well, isn't it?
And also,
like to grow. We all have to start somewhere, and having that support within the community, I think it's going to be amazing for the borough.
Yeah, I think people sometimes will also get a feel for perhaps what doesn't work. I think sometimes when you're entrepreneurial, you probably had 40 great ideas before something actually picks up, haven't you? So if you can go and learn about perhaps what's not going to work, or duplication. I think what we see sometimes, especially in the military not-for-profit sector, is quite a lot of duplication, and then you get into the kind of turf war, that's my patch, and that's not what social enterprises and not-for-profits should be about. It should be about collaboration and how can you add value to something. So sharing that information can only be a good thing, can't it?
Absolutely. You just hit the magic words then when you talked about value. So I think that could lead us on to the next kind of conversation that we want to start looking at as part of this podcast, and that is social value. So we talk a lot these days about social value in every sector. So we talk about it certainly in our sector, in the VCFSE sector, but it's being talked about more now in the business sector. Partly because a lot of businesses are picking up on the idea of social value, and long may that continue. They are starting to realise that social value really needs to be built into everything everybody does as a business, because we can't continue with this kind of extractive, it's all about the profit anymore, because we've seen what that's done in terms of climate, in terms of poverty levels, in terms of opportunities, etc., etc. So it's great that everybody's picking this idea of social value up now and embracing it. And we've been monitoring social value now and recording social value in lots of ways over the last probably decade now, really, with some great intensity. It's always concerned me when we've talked about these in terms of the qualitative data, the numbers of jobs we're creating, the number of local people we're employing, etc., even down to kind of survey results. And I'm, for one, really buoyed by the fact that we're now starting to talk about qualitative data and how we record qualitative data, and it's still being kind of kicked about. You know, the ball's going around the room. It's like, well, how can we record this, and that's going to be too time consuming, and what's that going to give us, etc., etc. But really, what it comes down to is we're looking at the impact on people. And I think for me, that's the most important thing when we're looking at social value. So rather than us looking at, well, we've created 5 jobs, who did we give those 5 jobs to? And most importantly, what's been the impact of us giving those 5 people those jobs? How's it changed their life? So I throw this question back to you, Laura. You do an awful lot of work that gives...
I love social value.
An amazing amount of value. So give us your perspective first in terms of the difference between quantitative and qualitative.
Okay. I've done quite a lot of work on social value because I love data. However, the 9 out of 10 cats culture is not always an easy way for people to capture life stories and personal progression. What does social value mean to me? I suppose some of it is about numbers, especially for commissioners. When you're outside of mainstream commissioning, and there's a requirement to kind of prove your worth, what do you capture to prove to a commissioner that might have 12 months worth of a budget that they should continue to try and find that money for you? And I think what a lot of smaller organisations find themselves is into a kind of non-futured commissioning contract, which might be via either the big lottery or, in our case, the Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust, where projects are funded. I think social value for me really starts with what's the legacy of what you are delivering, and how will that programme be delivered when the money isn't there anymore. And I think that's where the true social enterprise needs to come through. So I think it does. Social enterprise and calculating social value is absolutely dependent on data. And some of that data could be as basic as how many people have you got coming through the door, how many people are giving you positive feedback, how many people are receiving positive outcomes. So there's got to be a core data set that you're recording as an organisation, because otherwise how are you going to prove to commissioners that you're doing what it says on the tin? But I think against that is also the quantitative stuff, isn't it? The quantitative and the qualitative stuff. So what does a case study tell you about one person who's come through your front door and exited what we might class as a positive outcome? And one thing that some commissioners do is they talk about direct beneficiaries and indirect beneficiaries. And it's really hard to record that, isn't it? Like, so you're thinking, all right, we've helped Bob. Bob's got a wife, Jane, and they've got 2 kids and a dog. And actually, if Bob's life improves, then so does Jane's, so do the kids, and so does the dog. It might get walked more, it might get better food, who knows? But then how do you capture that without pulling out forms and surveys and structure? It's a really tricky topic. But there's been some interesting figures that have come through from an evidence base. And I think some of the social enterprises have a trouble with understanding what calculation can I actually use to demonstrate what I'm doing. So, okay, I know how many people are coming in to my project, my workshop, my session. I know how many people continue to come and how many people drop off. I know when somebody's disclosed something very personal and we may have made a referral onto another organisation. But what does that actually mean in terms of a cost saving? So I think having organisations coming together in the social value field and sharing some of their own evidence base is really important. So one of the calculations that we use quite a lot at Armed Forces Community HQ is around social isolation and severe loneliness. So back in, I want to say 2021, and the Department of Digital, Sports and Culture released an evidence-based calculation that if somebody was struggling with severe loneliness, and what they mean by severe loneliness is no friends, no family, no support networks, the actual cost of that to the public purse or the local community is £9,900. I'm thinking, okay, I have no idea how you've come to that figure. A year. Right. But what I think that's made up of is perhaps additional GP visits, possible calls to the local authority, and a host of other support, because you don't have that family network. And something as simple as providing a safe space for people to come and share what we call in the sector as an egg banjo, I'll tell you what that means in a minute, stops that severe loneliness and therefore reduces £9,900 per person. So we thought, that's really interesting. So how many of those people would we say that we have coming to Armed Forces Community HQ? And we identified about 56 mainly elderly males who, you know, their partners had died, they had no children, and if it wasn't for our services or whoever's services, it kind of doesn't matter at this point where they're accessing support from. If it wasn't for us, they literally wouldn't leave the house. And then what impact does that have on your health, on your mental health, on this, like, are you maintaining your property? Like, so many different kind of pathways from that. So yeah, 56. So that's a lot of money saved for 56 people. And then we think, yeah, that's really good. We'll go to the commissioners and we'll tell them we've saved you £250,000 this year. So, you know, give us 10 grand and we'll do something amazing with it. But it's not even about that, really, is it? It's about what is the story of that individual who now feels that they are connected to the community, they're engaging in positive social activities, they've got positive social networks. And when we talk about people, we're talking about a number. It's not a number, it's a human being. So we like to look at, yes, the numbers and the data is important, but I think most importantly is what is the impact on that individual, in addition to the whole resources of support we have available in the borough. And actually, how does that make us feel as humans, that we've contributed to another person not feeling severe loneliness? I would never want to experience severe loneliness. Luckily, I've got 2 daughters, so hopefully I'll have someone to bring my chocolates into my care home. But if I didn't have them, if you didn't have anyone, who would you go to? And how would you find out, actually, that service is available? So I hope that's give you a little bit of a response. But it's not about just capturing data. It's about humanising the services that we're delivering to individuals across the borough.
So you've worked in this sector now quite a long time.
I have.
What's your favourite story of the impact that you've created?
Oh gosh, I mean, there are quite a lot, really, and sometimes you don't always think about the individual stories because you're looking at a service, especially at a managing director type of level. But there is a family that we've supported who, I suppose, without our intervention, probably would not have custody of their children. When I think about impact, so this is probably a tale of, we see this quite a lot in the military not-for-profit sector, and I'm going to be very stereotypical because Dad served and Mum didn't, and that's just the case study. So Dad has left the military, come home, and the relationship has broken down. So some of the data suggests to us that within 5 years of leaving the military, there is a high possibility that your relationship is not going to survive. And that's evidence-based through impact reporting. And sometimes a lot of the things that we deal with are around what that separation looks like for whatever reason. So it could be that somebody's really struggling with post-traumatic stress disorder, or it could be a life-changing injury. And how are you going to know how that's going to impact your family, your children, your loved one, your parents, and everybody else? Because it's not just about that family, is it? It's about the wider family and the wider community. So this particular case study, we supported a couple to separate, and unfortunately there were children involved, and the children were struggling at school. There was a bit of a kind of competition, there was some parental conflict issues going on. And then unfortunately there was a referral made to social services, and we supported that family through what must have been a really extremely difficult time in their life, because does anybody want a social worker to knock on their door and insinuate you're not looking after your kids properly? I know I certainly don't. And I think without the support of some of our smaller services who have lived experience, they may have never told us. So a lot of that shame and stigma of having a social worker or somebody out in a professional capacity telling you that you're not managing your family right is quite hard, isn't it? So by working with us, we managed to keep that family unit out of social care. So when I think about success stories, healthy dad and healthy mum, but not living together, co-parenting 2 children really well, with no social care involvement, and the ripple effect that's had on their families, their cousins, their friends in school. That really kind of hits home as quite a nice tale to tell, and something that we've been part of and that we're proud of.
It's lovely. It's kind of, it sort of, you know, gives you goosebumps when you hear stories like that, and that kind of always makes me think about the difference between qualitative and quantitative data is just how moved we can often be by that qualitative data. And that's why I think it's really important to start sharing some of those stories and to really get deep into the impact that some of our fantastic organisations have. Like you said, not just on those families, but on those communities. Absolutely. By supporting those families. It's how we show that, because I think that, you know, that if you were looking at, say, you know, what we talked about asking for business support, showing those really meaningful, impactful stories, I think are the kinds of things that are going to trigger a business to go, oh my goodness me, I really want to get involved in that.
It's relatability.
It's harder when you've got a commissioning organisation who's looking at the stats going, and how many and how, you know. Yeah. It's how
and 9 out of 10 cats don't like whiskers, Laura. Yeah. So what are you going to do about that? Exactly. I don't know. Give them some tuna. Yeah. I mean, I suppose for us, the ripple effect has got to be more important than the numbers. But then if you're not capturing the numbers, you can't really get to the success stories, because what do you calculate it against? It's really, really tricky for smaller organisations. And I think the difference between return on social investment to a construction company who are perhaps applying for some planning permission and are going to give X amount of homes to people with lower incomes is very different to what a return on investment might look like from a commissioner who's giving you 10 grand to deliver a project. And I think, unfortunately, there isn't much differentiation between the two, and there needs to be, because they're very different processes and the impact's going to be very different as well.
They are. And I think, you know, it's not just about looking at the results of this in terms of commissioning. So just take contracts, for instance, and obviously we're looking at changes now to procurement law to say, you know, you have to be able to calculate your social impact if you're going to be able to tender for a public sector contract, and that's great. And it's kind of been around for a number of years. You know, it came out when we moved from just value-based tendering to best value, and it was seen as, well, what's the best value, not just for us if we're paying the bill for this contract, but what's the best value for the community, if you like. And it's kind of edged its way up to these changes now in terms of procurement. So a building company is going to have to say, you know, it's created X amount in social value. But really, how it's winning hearts and minds, is it about saying to those businesses, but actually it's about creating more than that. So,
is it about creating compassion? I think sometimes you have to wonder how serious organisations are when they're larger, and I don't mean that in any way, that how seriously are you taking it and what does it mean to you? And I think for some of the smaller organisations and community-based organisations, it's a very different social value, isn't it? It kind of feels like there needs to be categories of social value. Because on one hand, the building company were building homes and turning over multi-million pounds, compared to an organisation who might be tendering for parks and gardens, contract, I mean, it's just so different, isn't it? But is the impact any different on the individuals who are going to benefit from that? Probably not. So there's mass differences and then huge similarities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we come across that in the social enterprise sector. So we've got a community group that we're working with now, and the impact on them working with individuals in areas where you've got multiple indices of deprivation, where you've got, high instances of crime and drug taking and stuff, the stuff that they're doing in their community has got a much bigger impact than it would have in, say, I don't know, the middle of Standish, which is seen as relatively affluent. It doesn't mean that the work is any less valuable if they're doing it in Standish, but it's got much more of an impact. But what we're finding is some of those community groups have got less, because they're dealing more with those on the ground words, they've got less time to go and shout about it almost. So how do they record what it is that they're doing and the impact that they're making? And actually I'd love to see more support for those smaller enterprises with how we can support them to calculate their social value, because actually it's incredible what they're doing. And I'll just give you a little bit of an example that I've picked up from a couple of community groups that I've been working with recently. And that's the impact of having somebody in their community that somebody can go and see immediately.
Yeah. Who's credible.
Exactly. So it could be, and you've probably come across this yourselves, because people know you, they can walk in.
Absolutely.
And that the value of just having that building there, even if nobody walks in, but the fact they can walk in is incredible. How do you, just as a side note, how do you actually create, how do you measure that? You can't really, can you? But actually having somewhere where somebody can walk in off the street. So I was at a community group where somebody walked in off the street. There was a major incident, had gone on outside. They needed some support. And what I was saying to them, actually, what you've done at that point, just by being there, you've potentially prevented a crime happening.
Yeah.
You've possibly prevented an assault. In fact, there were 2 crimes that effectively got prevented. They probably prevented a health impact on an individual that would have probably led to a doctor's appointment or a crisis appointment, etc. So actually what you've done is all of these. They had no idea of the impact that's what they'd just done. And actually some of the work that you've done in terms of sharing how you calculate that social value amongst social enterprises has been really, really valuable, certainly for some of our social enterprises in the borough. And I'd love to see more of that happen on more of a basis. And actually I think for businesses that have got, and again with a slightly different hat on, I come across lots of businesses now who've, some of the bigger, and it's usually sort of contractual based businesses, who've got somebody just working on social value, and their whole role is to capture and monitor and find that social value that they can support and then measure it.
It's a big change, isn't it?
It is.
It feels like it's more organisational led.
Yeah.
Because there's more compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
And it's really seen as something that's quite important instead of something that just has to be done to win a contract.
Yeah, I think, and that's really key. I think really people are seeing the value of doing that now. They're seeing the value, as I talked about before, it's the value of their brand, the fact that they're a good organisation, that people want to work with them, people want to work for them. They're really, really seeing the benefit. And interestingly enough, I was chatting with one of our sponsors for Pitch and Pie, and they were saying they kind of started doing this because they felt they had to, because, they said, we're really going to be really honest about this and say, we went for a couple of contracts and they're kind of asking us what we're doing. So we said, we're going to have to crack on and do a bit of this.
Yeah, we
so
needed something for the 500 words in the bit.
Exactly, yeah. So they started doing it, and they said, and then it became a bit of actually, I really like this.
Yeah, that felt good.
Really enjoying this. It feels really good to do it. And I always say, and I think people laugh about it, actually, when you're a good business that gives back, it's good for your health.
It is.
And it actually is. That's the science bit, that when you actually do a good act, when you are a kind person, that releases an incredible amount of endorphins that's actually really, really good for your health. So I say to these businesses actually doing this, it's all, it's winner, chicken dinner, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or pie dinner, I suppose.
Chicken pie.
Did I mention we've got pies at Pitch and Pie? Anyway, it's all about the pies. But it's good for the health. So they actually start to do it and go, oh, this is good. And they're starting to look then for other things.
Opportunities, yeah.
A couple of examples have come up where businesses have gone to quote for a job, but have ended up kind of going, oh, well, I didn't realise you're a community centre or you're a social enterprise or whatever, and I really love what you're doing here. How can we help?
That's amazing. And that's what we need. And I think picking up on what you said about having a safe space for people to walk into, and when, you know, commissioning is really difficult when you are a smaller social enterprise, then having that contribution or that gifted support is so important, because keeping the lights on is tough.
Yeah.
And if you can't keep the lights on, you haven't got a safe space. And I think one of the things that we found during COVID in the military not-for-profit sector was that a lot of the larger charities, you know, through no fault of their own, they closed the doors because they furloughed their staff. And it was the smaller grassroots organisations who possibly had lower operating costs, but the passion for their community made them open the doors. And I think there's many military not-for-profits across the Northwest who were delivering food parcels, and I think at that time it really gave some of our members of the Armed Forces community who perhaps didn't have a purpose, because it was Operation COVID, all hands to the deck. And I think that was a really big turning point in community delivery, because the world changed after that and things became much more online and digital. And I think what we've lost really is the sense of, where can I walk through a door? When I built up that courage on Tuesday, today's the day that I'm going to reach out and support. And you have to pick up a phone and somebody says, "Well, have somebody get back to you in 2 weeks." You've lost it. You've lost that person's courage. So without that place where you can walk in and have that conversation in a safe place with people with lived experience who understand where you've been, where would we actually be in terms of people harming themselves, reaching out for crisis services, presenting at A&E? What we're actually doing is providing the A&E, really, aren't we, of frontline delivery services.
And if we could find out how to report that as an impact,
that would be lovely.
We'd all be
winner chicken pie.
Anybody knows, please do get in touch.
It will be interesting, though, like say, I know when we were saying this, when we sound like groups like the Men Sheds, most of our entrepreneurs, obviously, you know you've got to do your business planning. Everybody obviously knows they've got to get an accountant in. And then you're right, I think we'll get to that phase where everybody knows at some point, right, you know, who do I need to get? I need to set up my governance, I need to do a business plan, I need to sort out an accountant, I now need to find somebody who to do the social accounting, and I know that's something that we need to look at. Obviously, we're proper good as we move into year 4, Esther, and I know you mentioned before about all the training that you do in the support is there from a backroom support to enable all these groups to do it, because you're right, it's so crucial now that everybody records it, but taking that time off those groups to suddenly think, right, I've got to do my day-to-day delivery, but I've also got to go out and start writing bids. I've also got to go out and start doing my finances.
Oh, it's crazy.
No, I've got to go and start doing my social accounting.
How do you get off the hamster wheel? I mean, I think that was one of my slides on my social value training, if you remember. It was the hamster on the wheel. Like, how do I find time in a day to set up an organisation, manage the governance? If I'm working with people, make sure I'm delivering a safe and quality service, record it all, because if I mess up, I'm in trouble. And my notes need to be written up. And then what about them? Who's doing the marketing? It's so hard setting up a social enterprise, a community-based social enterprise, when you don't have that initial product to sell. And then I suppose where we came from was, okay, we've had some funding. We might not have this funding forever. Therefore, how do we make our services sustainable? And that's when you have to kind of look at your assets and, right, we have a building, we have a kitchen. Can we offer a service? Can we sell a breakfast? Okay, we've got veterans who are coming out of the military, and 75% of members of the Armed Forces community leaving the services are from the infantry in the Northwest. Practical service men and women with practical skills. Okay, we've got a skills crisis in the UK, and we've got all these infantry personnel coming out who can build things and are practical. Can we deliver a service? Can we get these people trained up in skilled trades? Because we've got a trades gap. okay, can we deliver that in the community to people who aren't members of the forces, and can we return some of that investment and continue to generate income? Yeah, we can probably do that. And I think without having the catalyst for those ideas, the people who kind of been there and done it, who can help you look at opportunities and bright ideas and turn them into something that's meaningful, a lot of our services just wouldn't be sustainable if we wholly relied on commissioning. And the last thing we want to do as community services is be out with begging bowls, shaking pots, because what we're not doing at that point is supporting people who really need us, because we're focused on fundraising. And that's a really difficult challenge for any not-for-profit or charity, not just in this sector, in all sectors. Where do you apply your skills? But where are you going to get the money from to keep the lights on? It's probably something that's kept me up a lot over the last 5 years.
Yeah, and that we have a lot of those conversations, don't we? You know, with a lot of our enterprises in Wigan, we really do. And there's lots of good things coming. And really, what a lot of our work in Proper Good has been focused on is trying to make some of those social enterprises sustainable. Yeah, trying to give them the tools that help them to continue. And it's not just survive from one grant to another, but to kind of go, well, how can we make ourselves sustainable? How can we get a regular income in? And a lot of our social enterprises as well are staffed by volunteers. And that, that needs to change. People need to be paid for the services that they do. Because the value they're creating, coming back to that, the value they're creating by offering those services is incredible.
Yeah, I don't know what we do without our workforce consists of our paid and unpaid workforce. And I think a lot of the times, if you think about a volunteer, you think about a very basic level of training, helping out, doing a bit. But we couldn't run our community facility if it wasn't for our workforce, whether you're paid or unpaid. And that individual deserves the same input with regards to their training, their development, their career development. And we have a lot of people who are retired who want to give back, and therefore it's cool, because I don't want a job. I just want to serve the community. I've perhaps received a service at some point which has got my life back on track, and now I want to pay that forward, and that's brilliant. But again, we have people who are volunteering because they want to step on the career ladder, they want to gain some experience. Like, how are we using workforce development in the sector to really support people? It's an interesting topic, and I think it's also something that some of the smaller social enterprises could really benefit from understanding more about, because there are people who want to give back. Just like we're giving back from a business perspective to buy a ticket for Pitch and Pie, people do want to give back. It does make us feel good, and a lot of people have a lot to give.
Yeah. And we've got businesses who are quite happy to let their staff go and volunteer to places, but not sure. We do have at the Pitch and Pie events, we've got Match My Project coming to with a store, so that they can explain to businesses how that works. So for people who don't know what that is, it's about community groups saying, well, I really need some support with this. And then businesses can look at it and go, well, I could do that. So you might have a decorating service and somebody needs their community centre decorating, and the decorators can say, yep, we've got, skilled people can do this.
That's brilliant, isn't it?
So we can come along and decorate your community.
Like an asset economy, isn't it?
Absolutely. And really, that's the ways in which communities work best is when you've got that asset transfer, those skills transfers that you can offer. And you've got an economy trading on, well, you can do this for me.
Goodwill.
And actually, it's
kindness.
got to be that trade, hasn't it?
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
got to be where, a business can say, right, well, I can come and do that for you. But if I can then market that and that helps me with my business, you've scratched my back as well as me scratching yours.
And we've got to be willing to give back as well. Because I think sometimes it's really easy to take the kind offers of support. But then, if somebody needed to reach out to me and say, Laura, can I have an hour of your time to talk about my social value? I have to be prepared to pay that forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are we doing as community leaders, people who are commissioned and are doing okay? I'll never say well, because we're never in that position, are we, from a not-for-profit perspective? But how do I give back, and then what impact does that have on my team from a leadership perspective? If I'm giving back, does that encourage other people to give back? It should do, shouldn't it?
Absolutely. Do you have projects that you think you could get support from businesses to help with?
Absolutely. Like the 2 projects that I'm leading on at the moment, it would be fantastic, you know, to get another business's input on those as well, like the hospital discharge as well, you know, because leading on, there's the 3 main hospitals. You know, we've got WWL, we've got the hospitals at Burnley, which covers 5, and also we've got Manchester as well. You know, so me coming in as a project manager from my background and leading on the hospital discharge, you know, it would be absolutely fantastic, you know, if somebody could give back and say, well, actually, we can support you with that. You know, it would be amazing.
I think sometimes it's even as it's not small, it's massive, but it might be a phone call to somebody who's been discharged from hospital and doesn't really have anyone, or a weekly coffee, you know, an hour out of your week to help somebody with loneliness.
It's that loneliness, you know, as Laura
grabbing
just
a
said.
prescription, you know, because the pharmacy didn't have it. Really, really small bits of your time that make such a huge difference to somebody's life when they
that
are
1
lonely.
hour, that 1 hour giving back to that one person, you can't measure it.
No.
You really cannot measure it. You know, the social isolation part of it. If you've got 1 hour, you can spare just to go and, you know, give Doris round the corner and knock, say, "Hiya, Doris, you know, how's your day been?" Or, you know, I'm just going to call, do you need anything? Or just sitting with them, just having a chat. The impact on that one person's life is massive. You cannot measure that. You know, we know it lifts them.
We can't measure it, but we can tell people about it.
You can tell
That's
that.
what we're not good
That's
at.
really what we need to
yeah.
get better at, isn't
Yeah.
it? Is telling people those stories, is generating those goosebump moments, is
And the
then
ripple
inspiring.
effect.
Absolutely.
Like you said, the ripple effect, just by that 1 hour, and like I said, measuring it, by doing that, it's not only lifting the person you go and seeing, you know, we're giving that, like, go and seeing Doris, but it's what it does to you as a person, how it makes you feel as well, the impact that you've had on somebody else's life. You know, it's that
we
feel
saw
good
this a lot in
factor.
COVID, didn't we? We saw it so much with neighbourhood groups in COVID, and I still get at this point every year. I'm saying this because I got them day before yesterday. There's a little guy that I used to do his shopping for him when he was isolated in COVID. I still get a bag of apples from his tree every year as a little thank you for all the shopping I did for him in COVID. And it's lovely. And again, that's that. He wanted to do something for me because he couldn't go out and do his shopping, and I was doing it. I was doing it anyway. I was going to the shops anyway to feed the family. It was nothing for me. But that the feeling that you get from that is incredible, and that his sense of isolation that he had was gone because he had this weekly visit with his shopping, and we'd have a little bit of a chat, and we've stayed in contact, and that's lovely. And I think we've lost that a little bit, haven't we? We've lost that kind of sense of reaching out to everybody in our communities that are isolated.
It's kind of like we don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Because there's no restrictions.
And I really like that idea of even if it's just a phone call, because, you know, I hear some businesses say, well, you know, I'd love to give my staff a day off to go and volunteer, but I can't do with them out of the office or, you know, retail, for instance, if they have a shop, they might not be able to spare them because they need them actually in the shop for the shop to open. But surely everybody could spare 10 minutes for a phone call to check in on somebody. So that's a lovely idea with the whole discharge.
And it just makes
programme.
such a huge difference.
Yeah.
So our hospital discharge programme is funded by the Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust, and it is for veterans leaving hospital. And the primary purpose of that programme is to get people out of hospital quicker. And some of the delays and barriers that are blocking beds for people, we all know what the hospital crisis looks like in the borough, are things like I'm waiting for a chair to be delivered, or it's not safe for me to go down my own path at home and I need my garden shrubs cutting down, or I've got nobody to pick up my prescription, or who's going to check on me, or who am I going to phone if I feel unwell and I can't get through to the GP. And it just, you know, having that person that you can pick up the phone to makes such a huge difference for something as big as putting people in beds in hospital, you know.
I think you might have to apply to Pitch and Pie for that one. Okay, so following on from those conversations, we'd like to do a little bit now of a spotlight on your social enterprise.
Thank you.
We've talked about the importance of November for social enterprises, it being Social Enterprise Day in November, but obviously November is particularly important in your calendar.
It certainly is. And when I saw the dates released for Pitch and Pie, I thought, that's going to be a busy week. So yeah, Armed Forces Community HQ, we are a not-for-profit community interest company. We've been going since 2018. There's quite a tragic story behind our setup. So our founding director, Gillian Molyneux, lost her husband, Lieutenant Commander Ian Molyneux, on HMS Astute, in a very tragic incident where he was commended for his bravery, and Gillian was then left with 4 children to raise as a young widow. I can't even begin to imagine a scenario like that. However, she has used that grief to focus on how to support young people and families through grief and loss associated to losing a loved one in the military. It's absolutely inspirational, and her baby, I suppose, was created to provide a safe space in Wigan Borough for members of the Armed Forces community. And I know we were just having a chat there outside of the podcast about the importance of family, and actually somebody signing up for the Armed Forces, you're not just signing up for yourself, you're signing up for your future spouse, partner, children, parents, aunties, uncle. The ripple effect in regards to that is massive. So we always like to kind of talk about how we were formed and who formed us. I joined the board a little after that. My background was in substance misuse sector. I worked for a national charity covering a large patch at an executive management level, and I suppose when Gillian and I met, I also had a partner who served in the Armed Forces, and my granddad and grandma raised me, and my granddad was a desert rat in World War II. So coming from a military family, being with somebody who'd served in the military, having an Armed Forces child, I've always wanted more support for families. So when Gillian and I kind of got together, it was refreshing that we had this women-led Armed Forces organisation, which doesn't happen very often in this sector, believe it or not. And therefore, Armed Forces Community HQ really took off. So we won our very first large award, which we were very grateful for, in 2019, and it was one of the biggest grants that had come from the newly formed Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust. Before that, you had to apply to your local barracks for about 20k. If you were a military not-for-profit, you'd go and see your local barracks and you'd say, I've got a really great idea to help squaddies, and they'd go, if they liked you, they'd say, all right, you can have 20 grand and we'll see what you do with it. And now it's a very different beast, because there's quite a lot of money coming through that MOD department. So we have delivered some quite large grants for the Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust. But tackling serious stress for us was really the one where we looked at the impact of what collaboration looks like in a local authority area. And our hashtag of it's local delivery that matters has really run through our veins since that time. So the Tackling Serious Stress programme was a partnership with Wigan Council and Armed Forces Community HQ. And we were up against some very large regional and large geographical patches. So organisations, NHS trusts, larger charities were delivering across patches on a regional geography, and we were the only organisation who were commissioned to deliver a local authority based programme just in Wigan Borough. And what was surprising, not surprising for us because we know how amazing the local authority partnerships are, was the difference in the numbers of people who were coming through on programme. So at one point in the programme we had more participants on our programme than all the other 7 organisations, and they were like, what the hell are you doing in Wigan to get this many members of the armed forces community coming through for support? We were like, well, there's quite a lot of people in Wigan who are members of the armed forces community, around 22,000.
Wow.
So that kind of gives us a bit of a head start. But secondly, what we do have in Wigan is a local authority who are committed to the needs of the armed forces community, who want to abide by the Armed Forces Covenant and don't want to show any disadvantage to people who served. So I think Wigan Council have always been quite forward in their thinking with regards to supporting people who've served, making sure there's adequate housing, education and healthcare. So they've always been a massive champion of that and have had policies that are reflective of that. And indeed other local authorities have come and learnt from Wigan, and they have been seen as a kind of an exemplar, I suppose, in that sector. But for us, what it taught us, that local partnerships, collaboration, understanding who your partners are, what their needs are, being accessible, being local and being credible, were really the kind of pillars of operating a good service that people could refer into. And that's where our hashtag local delivery matters strapline came from. And we've always worked in a way where we collaborate with organisations. So we now run a programme called Thrive Together, which used to be called the Veterans People, Places and Pathways Programme. It's funded by the Armed Forces Covenant Fund Trust, and it's also overseen by the Office of Veterans Affairs. And this programme is really to raise the bar in this sector. And as we're talking about social enterprise and not-for-profit organisations and making our organisation successful in my sector, is where the strength of our collaboration comes from through the Forces Wellbeing Collective. So the idea is that we work together in collaboration and not competition. If we do that, there is actually probably enough money to go around to make everyone successful. That we kind of align our back office function and support each other with the skills that we have to take the load off another leader in another organisation. Exactly the kind of stuff we've been talking about today, but across a sector and a region. That there are safe places for members of the armed forces community to go when they're in need. And also that there's a really good workforce development strategy that's equitable and allows people to have the same level of training and workforce development regardless of whether you're an armed forces breakfast club or whether you're a national charity. We all deserve that same standard of training. So yeah, we're very happy to be in probably one of our busiest months. It's a commemorative time for us where we remember our loved ones who we've lost, but we also give thanks for people's service. We give thanks for our freedoms, and we take the opportunity to come together as a community. So we will be available and open in Wigan Borough after remembrance ceremonies on Sunday. We'll be open for a cup of tea and a slice of cake and indeed some hot pot. We do know that some of our community like to go and have a drink on Remembrance Sunday, and we like to line people's stomachs with some nice pie before they go out.
It's all about the pies.
It always comes back to the pie. So if you are a Wigan resident and you'd like to come and say hello after commemorations in Wigan Borough, Molyneux House will be open from about 12:30 to 1 o'clock. Please pop down, come and see us, get some pie.
Fabulous. Are there any other events that you've got going on in November? For
November's pretty busy with remembrance activity, but there is a couple of programmes that we are delivering. So we've got our hospital discharge programme, which Wendy is. So Wendy's just joined us from Greater Manchester Police. I'll just let her tell you a little bit about that.
So my background is I have done 18 years previously with Greater Manchester Police as a police community support officer. Started off initially in Manchester and then moved to Leigh. I transferred to Leigh where I did quite a lot of time covering various areas within Leigh, so I know quite a lot about Leigh from working there in the deprived communities. Did a lot of work there, and then due to family commitments I then moved over to Wigan, working from Wigan Police Station, which I did 9 years, and then worked mainly around schools, is where I came into contact with the AFC HQ, who I supported. So part of my role as well, I did nearly 8 years as well as part of the PCSO, was a place-based PCSO, working together with the local authority as well, and that revolving door. So a lot of my work within the community as well was diverting a lot of people within the community to Armed Forces HQ, identifying that they are part of the Armed Forces community, and telling them all about the fantastic work they were doing as well, and also supporting them and the veterans. It's a big part of my life. And then in September, very beginning of September, I then chose to leave Greater Manchester Police and join AFC HQ, which I've always had a massive passion for, and supporting the community.
So Wendy brings like a mass of experience for local community groups, partnerships, safeguarding. I mean, I could sit here forever and tell you about the strengths of Wendy. So Wendy is leading on our hospital discharge programme. So we're working with Wigan, Wrightington and Leigh Hospital, with Blackburn Royal and with Manchester Royal Infirmary to look at that pathway of discharge for members of the Armed Forces community. And Wendy also leads on our Hope and Home programme, which is a programme for people who are experiencing domestic abuse, who may be members of the Armed Forces community. We are very focused on encouraging male victim survivors to come forward, talk about their experiences and get the right support. But our biggest focus, I would say, is developing our Healthy Relationships programme, which is taking up a huge amount of our time and something that we're finding really worthy. What we find is that when people have been raised in the military, there's often a disparity to what may be perceived as a normal civilian relationship because of perhaps training or relationships that have occurred where people have lived on barracks, and it's very dissimilar to what a civilian household would look like. So our Healthy Relationships programme is about understanding what good relationships look like, spotting the signs of when things aren't going right and doing something about it proactively, so it doesn't ultimately result in separating families and parental conflict. So I've really focused on that. And then we've got our Thrive Together project, which is called the Forces Wellbeing Collective in the Northwest. So we're pretty busy. Very busy.
Yeah.
Just a
I'd
bit
love to say, what do you do in your
busy.
spare time? But you clearly don't have any.
In my spare time, I try and give back. Yeah. Selfless, Mother Teresa. No, not at all. It's a wonderful organisation and it's accessible. And the important thing for us is that there will always be a front door open for members of the Armed Forces community to walk through. And anything that we can do to raise awareness, because there are so many members of the Armed Forces community in Wigan Borough. There will be people who don't know that we are there. We are here next to Wigan Little Theatre, across the road from some massive flats. And if you're a member of the Armed Forces community and you need support, we are there, open 9 till 5, Monday to Friday. And we will do our best to support you in whatever needs that you have.
And every last Saturday of the month.
And every last Saturday of the month. Thank you very much.
Tell us about being a member of the armed forces community. So, for instance, I remember a conversation with your colleague Sue, who said, when I was telling her about my circumstances, and I said, "Oh, I'm not a member of the armed forces community," and I said, "I haven't got a partner who served," and she said, "Did your mum or dad serve?" And I went, "Oh yeah, my dad served."
Oh yeah,
and
my
did
dad.
And then what about grandparents? "Oh yeah, my granddad served as well." And have you got any, siblings? "Oh yeah, my brother was in the RAF." Yeah. And it, you don't realise sometimes that you are a member of the military.
You don't. It's really funny
community,
that
so-
you say that. I remember doing an event with Wigan Council, and I think it was like an end of year wrap up event, and we were asked to go and talk about what we do. And the first thing I did was define the definition of a member of the armed forces community. So we class the armed forces community as serving or non-serving regular or reserve personnel, their families, their carers, and we also include our cadets family. So cadets, adult cadet volunteers, and even parents of cadets. Everybody's welcome, but we don't just have those people in our community. There are people who want to give back to the armed forces community. There are people who have a passion about the armed forces. We have people who are historians who will go and find medals from your great granddad or replicas, and the community is vast. And we're also slap bang in the middle of schools, so we are a community resource for schools as well. There's lots of organisations who operate from our facility. So for example, the High Risers Residents Association come and meet at Molyneux House. So we are available if people need a community space in that locality to come and hire a room from.
And I've done just that when I've provided training courses in the past. Yeah,
It's a nice
excellent
space.
facilities.
It's a
yes.
lovely
It's very
space.
warm and welcoming.
It is very much so. Very much so.
And that's a lot of the feedback that we do get from people who do use our space. They're very warm, welcoming, and everybody's on hand to help.
Yeah, it
It's
is very much so.
fantastic.
I
Very much
suppose
so.
the only thing I'd kind of want to add at this time is what I have seen is an increasing amount of beacon alerts. So beacon alerts are social media alerts when a veteran has gone missing. And I would say probably since the beginning of October, I've probably been seeing about 3 or 4 a day. And what I'd say at this time of year, as the nights become darker, people can often be triggered, especially around November, bonfire night, loneliness sets in, the clocks have gone back, is that people get sadder at this time of year, especially families who may not be together, and the thought of Christmas is coming up. It can be the start of a very lonely time for some of the members of our community. There is actually a protocol that's been developed, which Greater Manchester Police have trialled, and is now being implemented across the force wide, which is called the Forcer Protocol. So if you are a member of the Armed Forces community, you can sign up your loved one who has served to what's called Safe and Found Online. So if you perhaps are at risk at some point of becoming very lonely, and you would like someone to know where you would possibly go if you were lonely, so it can help find you quicker if you're not in a good place, you can register your details free of charge. You can tell people who you are, where you might go, some details about how you might be found quicker for if you are ever in a crisis position. And that means that your loved ones and the police can access that data only if relevant. It's completely secure to find you quicker. And hopefully the Forcer Protocol will save lives, and we're encouraging all people who have served at some point to register on this amazing facility.
And how do they register?
So it would be on a link. If you Google the Forcer Protocol, it will take you by link to the Safe and Found online website where you would register your details.
What a great initiative.
It's an amazing initiative. It's very similar to the Herbert Protocol for people who have struggled with dementia and may go missing.
Right.
It's a brilliant initiative, and we would encourage anybody out there, if you have served, or you're the family member of somebody who's served, who you think may experience some triggers or some loneliness, get registered on that site, because it will help us find you quicker.
Brilliant. Can I just pick up on something you've mentioned quite a lot in your conversations, and that's the word collaboration.
Oh, God, I love
And I think it's
collaboration.
something that you are particularly good at. So obviously I've seen you work with other social enterprises in the borough, and you've actually supported a lot of social enterprises in the borough yourself with the things that you've done. But tell us about some of your collaborations and how they've helped.
Oh, I just love it when agencies work together, because there's no one organisation who can sort everything out for you. And I think this really goes back to local delivery matters. If you are delivering on a regional basis, so a lot of organisations have moved to kind of regional delivery. How can you possibly know who the Armed Forces champion is at every job centre in the northwest, at every housing office in the north? It's just impossible. And I suppose where collaboration comes in is that regular communication, having training that's accessible, having an expert that you can pick the phone up to on anything, and I think that works so well in this borough, because I know that I could pick the phone up to a handful of experts on so many different subject matters, and I would be welcomed to ask a question, and that information would be then given to me and probably followed up on. Collaboration has got to be our key and not competition, and I will help any organisation that asks for it. I mean, I really would, because I believe it's the right thing to do. But collaboration for me, it's more than partnership working and information sharing. Collaboration is very different. It's about wanting another organisation to succeed and being there as a responsible resource and expert to make that person feel comfortable in asking your advice. And what I've found is that I have a network of people who, no matter how silly I think my question is, will reassure me that it's not silly and it's bona fide and it's valid, and I'll be given that information with kindness and security, that it's all right to ask a question. And that's why I think collaboration is just a little bit different. Wanted collaboration, I'd take that any day over a partnership agreement.
Brilliant. I love that. I love that. And you definitely give that back in spades, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Just wrecking the podcast studio. Sorry, guys. Okay, so tell us about your role then. How are you finding things working for Armed Forces HQ?
I'm very passionate about it, my role. It's very different, coming from 18 years, as said, working for Greater Manchester Police. But yeah, it's good, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm getting a lot of support in-house as well. But I think for me as well, if I just touch on the hospital discharge, yesterday, for instance, I went over to Burnley, saw what they do within the hospital, and then on a home visit, and I came away, I felt inspired. I thought, yeah, I found my calling.
Yeah, lovely.
I really have. As said, I've discussed with Laura on many occasions, having that passion, and you've got to have passion. It's not just a job. You're changing people's lives, and that's what I'm all about, and I always have been about, even from coming from GMP. The community, that was where my heart is, and was, and still is, and doing these jobs, and doing the two jobs that I'm leading on, with the projects that I'm leading on, the hospital discharge.
We're really excited about the Healthy Relationships programme. I think it's going to be an absolute game changer in the sector, for people to just have that go-to resource to completely change their lives, because the impact of domestic abuse is so severe that if we can get people to recognise unhealthy behaviours, unsafe behaviours and red flags, not necessarily to leave, but to be curious about why that is and seek the appropriate support to keep safe, I think we will save a lot of people from a lifetime of suffering and trauma.
Absolutely. Just kind of one final question from me then, and this often comes up when we're going back to the question of social value. What would happen in Wigan if you didn't exist?
I wouldn't like to think.
What would
I really
happen?
wouldn't like to think.
Because that's one of the questions we look at with social value, or when we're looking at things like the theory of change, is what would happen if you didn't do what you do?
I think there would be a lot of lonelier and unsupported members of the armed forces community, but fundamentally the cost would be seen in the public purse. It would be seen in counselling and therapeutic services, because we actually deliver psychosocial modalities. We deliver person-centred counselling, EMDR therapy, couples therapy, you name it, we deliver it. The waiting lists would be higher, GP referrals would be higher, the impact would be seen. So in 2022, our social value was recorded at £56.20 for every £1 that was invested by the local authority. So if you do the calculation,
I'm not very good at mental maths.
it would cost
It's a lot of money.
It would cost a lot of money. Our social value is huge, but more importantly, I think that sense of camaraderie, purpose, walking into a welcoming, safe space with people who understand your journey is priceless. You can't put a price on that.
No, you can't put a price on it, but you can tell its story.
Absolutely. And I think we all need to get better at that, because but again, it's like the hamster wheel. It's your priorities in this sector will always be keeping people safe and well. And sometimes it takes a while to establish your organisation, your brand, and then you think, oh God, we've not been telling people half of the stuff that we've been doing. Now we're in a position as an organisation where we've grown and we can give back, and now we can focus on the things that make us a great organisation. But I understand how hard it is for organisations starting up, and you cannot be everything to everybody. If we can create this community of asset economy where people can pick up a little bit of PR and marketing and pick up the phone and ask a question about HR, it really is a community within a community based on collaboration. And if we can create that in Wigan, I think we've cracked it, really, haven't we?
Absolutely. And just picking up on something in that little answer there, I mean, we've talked about the ripple effect, or the butterfly effect, but when you're looking at the value of what you do, the ripple effect of changing one person's life, and to the amount of services that you then touch on. So I know you've touched on kind of the health service, for instance, but it can be everything from schools, for instance. So if you've got happier children in a family because you've had that level of intervention, you're actually helping that class full of 30 kids when you've not got a child that's disruptive because of what's going on at home. You've got all of those different kind of ripple effects, and I think if we tried to map that in the borough, the ripple effect of everything that's going on in the borough,
You'd need a big flip chart.
We'd need a very big flip chart there, wouldn't we? We just need the whole of Wigan to draw it on. Yeah, or a very big pie. Did I mention pie?
Very big pie.
Yeah. Okay, lovely. Thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
It's been incredible. We love what you do, and long may it continue.
Thank you. Much appreciated.